Good morning, everyone. So yesterday was a big day, especially for Drigong Kagyu people. Yesterday, according to the Tibetan calendar, is the 25th day of the month of Vaishaka, 25th day of Saka Dawa. The 25th day of Saka Dawa for Drigong Kagyu people is the anniversary of the Mahaparinirvana, meaning the great passing of the founder, Kyopa Jigten Sumgit. So we, a group of us were able to gather together to do virtual Guru Puja with also the feast offering. So I shared some photos on my Facebook page. One thing to call your attention to that might be meaningful, helpful. I also shared a text that I compiled. I didn't create the text per se. I compiled it and, of course, laid out and created a PDF for it that you can download. It's a collection of excerpts of sayings of the founder, Kyopa Jigten Sumgit. So you can easily download from the link that is on my Facebook page. So whether you're watching on Facebook or joining us on Zoom this morning, if you're interested, later you can go look for that link and feel free to share that document if you think there's anyone who might be interested in the content. Those are kind of excerpts taken from several publications, translations of the teachings of the founder who lived in the 12th century. And it is said that his main deity, the main idam that he practiced, that was very close to his heart, was in fact Avalokiteshvara. So Avalokiteshvara, which is also the deity that we are practicing, focused on for this series, the compassion meditation, which is what we are doing. So this is the midpoint of this. This is the midpoint of this particular program. This is the last week of the month of Saka Dawa. So one important announcement to make is that according to the initial announcement, which I don't know if you noticed, it is said that the final installment, the final practice together for this program is going to be this Sunday. But it's actually not this Sunday. I've had to change it to this Saturday. So please take note that it is going to be this Saturday instead of this Sunday. Yeah. So anyway, so the title of this program that we've been doing is called Compassion Meditation. And there's a second part to this title, which is the Avalokiteshvara Deity-Yoga. Avalokiteshvara Deity-Yoga. So from there, you should know that this is not, say, a love and compassion meditation in the style of, say, if you're familiar with metta meditation, whereby you meditate on radiating, kind of expanding, radiating in the sense of expanding this feeling, this emotion of love and compassion that you cultivate. You cultivate by first identifying as clearly as you can. What is this love? What is this compassion? Right? In Chinese, the word is 慈悲. 慈 is love or friendliness, warm-heartedness, and compassion. Compassion is wanting to free yourself, everyone, doesn't matter. Compassion is that wanting to free yourself, to free others from experiencing suffering. So this first identifying that, right? So in metta meditation, it's also important to begin, metta and karuna meditation is important to begin by first identifying what is this feeling that we're talking about. And then especially the word love, it can mean so many things in the English language. I'm sure also in Chinese, in Spanish, in French, it can mean so many things, love, right? I love my mom, I love video games, I love hamburger. Hopefully you're not loving these three things in the same way. And then compassion also, literally in English, at least, compassion literally, I don't know how many people know this. Literally, it means to suffer with. Passion in the older use of that word, it means suffering, such as in the expression, the Passion of Christ during Holy Week, the Passion of Christ, meaning the suffering of Jesus, the suffering of Christ. So compassion, literally, its etymology is to suffer with. Now, today, of course, I think a lot of us, when we say compassion, we don't necessarily think to suffer with. But I think emotionally, we easily get into that situation and then mistake that situation as, oh, that is compassion, meaning to suffer with. Meaning you see someone suffering. Of course, to recognize that they are suffering is a form of suffering with. To that degree, to that point, I think in the Dharma teachings about karuna, we are in agreement that yes, you have to be able to recognize. So you have to be able to see that someone is suffering, that someone could even be yourself. But then, do you suffer along with? And is that what karuna is? No, it's not. Once recognizing that someone is suffering, whether yourself or others, then this feeling of like, how can I? Oh, I wish this person is free from suffering. What can I do to free this person from suffering? Of course, if the person is right in front of you, as you know, it's a lot easier to free this person from suffering. If the person is further away from you, a little bit harder. Reachable by phone, by WhatsApp, by Zoom, maybe you can talk to them. But as you reach out and to, try to remove that suffering from them, be careful not to get sucked into suffering. In fact, in some ways, suffering is more seductive, I would say, than happiness. At least for some of us right now, we more easily get sucked into other people's suffering than we get sucked into other people's happiness. Have you noticed that? That other people's suffering sometimes is more infectious than other people's happiness. In fact, other people's happiness, sometimes when we see that, you can see there's some form, whatever you want to call it, but there's a certain form of jealousy that comes up. And so you kind of not so easily get sucked into other people's happiness. Whereas other people's suffering, many of us are so expert at hoarding it or getting sucked into it. So it's important that as we talk about compassion, as we try to cultivate compassion, we understand Buddha's definition of karuna. What is Buddha's definition of karuna? In Buddha's definition of karuna, you know that you're getting sucked into someone else's suffering is not going to help anyone. Right? It's like you see someone drowning. Of course, you know, to save this person might entail you jumping in to pull them out. Yeah? But if you jump in and you don't know how to swim, and even if you jump in and you don't know what to expect, right? Then it's very likely both of you will drown. So compassion here is not idiot compassion. As His Holiness Dalai Lama says, don't practice idiot compassion. So this is important. To be able to see suffering. So the Tibetan translation of the name Avalokiteshvara, right, is related to, it's not a literal translation of Avalokiteshvara, actually, very interestingly. The Tibetan name for this Buddha, Chenrezi, is not related to, directly related to the Sanskrit Avalokiteshvara. But the meaning is there. Chenrezi, Avalokiteshvara, the Sanskrit, that name is related more to sound, to hearing. And I will explain that in a little bit. Chenrezi, on the other hand, is related to eyes. Chen is eyes, is related to eyes. So Chenrezi is the Lord that whose eyes, whose gaze is always sort of gazing on, is always falling upon the beings of the six realms. And all of us that are suffering all kinds of confusion and afflictive emotions, Chenrezi, the eyes of Chenrezi are always gazing on us. So that's emphasizing seeing. So the first step to removing obstacle from compassion arising is not to close our eyes. You know, sometimes we see so many problems in the world or in ourselves. You know, I think in some ways it's rooted in, we see so many problems, or we think we see so many problems, right? We see so many problems in ourselves that we just feel overwhelmed, and we say, I can't look at it. I don't want to look at it. So if you don't want to look at your own stuff, definitely also, you know, your ability to look at what's around you, right? The suffering that is around you also shuts down. So then we close our eyes. And if that's the case, no compassion can arise. No possibility, right? Because if you don't see, right? You can walk around and say, and sometimes even this, you know, like the Buddhist teachings might accidentally feed this kind of confusion. Then we think, oh, everything is fine. Nothing's happening. Ultimately, nothing is, you know, but people choose to suffer. So what can I do? That, you know, it's a way where the Dharma, Gampopa says, you know, if you don't practice the Dharma right, Dharma can lead you to the lower realms. It's not saying that automatically Dharma leads you to the lower realms, but it says even something as precious as the Dharma, if you don't understand it, if you don't practice it right, it can lead you to the lower realms. So first we have to see. We have to see suffering. Then we have to see the cause of suffering. So now we're in the Four Noble Truths, you know. They're not that separate. Sometimes when people explain these things, they say, oh, Four Noble Truths, especially in Tibetan tradition, oh, that is Hinayana teaching. Oh, then there's compassion and love. Oh, that's Mahayana teaching, this and that. Oh, then there's the deity, and that is the Vajrayana teaching, Since, yesterday was anniversary of Kyobaji Densungun, I'll share with you. Kyobaji Densungun doesn't look at things like this, I mean, he's quite aware of these categories, these divisions that have been articulated and, taught in India, in Tibet. But his emphasis is that, it's all a single path to awakening. Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, all these levels and the three turnings of the wheel. And some of you are familiar with these expressions. He says they are all a single path. A single path that is the single intention, the single heart desire, you could call that, of all Buddhists, is to lead us to freedom from suffering. So in the First Noble Truth, seeing suffering and the causes of suffering, that is the basis for the arising of compassion, of karuna. If we don't see suffering, then forget about seeing the cause of suffering. So first we have to see dukkha and see it very clearly. When we see dukkha and we see it very clearly, when we say, oh, I don't want this, And then when I don't want this, it's not just yourself, I don't want this. You see that other people also have dukkha, and you see that, I'm sure they also don't want dukkha. And you see that when people run around doing all kinds of things, some things you approve, some things you don't approve. Some things you can see is going to create more of a mess. But you have to recognize that even that, it's because they don't want suffering. But lacking understanding, lacking wisdom, they end up creating more suffering, which is what we do too all the time. We don't want suffering, but we rush, heads on to suffering. We want happiness, but we do everything to dismantle happiness. Especially when our minds have become so tight, become overpowered. I find this myself in my own situation, when the mind has become tight, then as much as I don't like that feeling, but because the confusions have taken over so powerfully, then even though I have a way to be done with this and to move in the direction of happiness, instead of pursuing that, I single-handedly destroy. That is our problem. So first we have to develop these eyes of Chenrezig. Chenrezig can also be translated, poetically as, beautiful eyes. But these eyes are beautiful not in the conventional sense of beauty. These eyes are beautiful because these eyes see the suffering of sentient beings. When we have the eyes that can recognize suffering, then we become like Avalokiteshvara. We become like Chenrezig. So this practice is to become like Chenrezig. To become like Chenrezig. How do we become like Chenrezig? Of course, we do this meditation, we do the chanting, we practice the mantra, we visualize. But you also need to understand, that what it means to embody Chenrezig is to see suffering. Then there are levels of suffering. There is the obvious suffering, which is called the suffering of suffering. The very obvious kind of suffering. Then there is the more subtle suffering, which is called the suffering of change. When things change, we experience suffering. We experience dis-ease, discomfort. The change can be any kind of change. And in fact, because Everything is changing all the time. So then there is this constant stress. And that's why we need a radiator system to cool down that stress. Imagine if your car, your vehicle, the motor vehicle, by the way, is apparently one of the worst designed equipment that we have today. Because it uses so much energy and it creates so much heat and wasted energy. But that's our situation, And luckily there's this radiator in the vehicle, even though it's a very inefficient. If there's no radiator, of course, the whole thing would blow up. But even with the radiator, there's so much heat there. Same with us, We need to find a supreme radiator that will cool down completely the heat of samsara. So suffering of change, when things change, which is all the time, then dukkha increase, dukkha accumulate, dukkha aggregate, dukkha come together, become stronger. Then finally, the most subtle type of suffering is called the suffering, and the dukkha of the aggregates. These are referring to the basic building blocks of both body and mind. That on the most subtle level, there is this ongoing dukkha. So we need to have compassion even for that level. So sometimes it's said, it's easy to have compassion for those who are overtly, obviously suffering. It's a lot harder to have compassion for those that we have labeled to be doing better than us. So it said, can you even imagine having compassion for a 10th Bhumi Bodhisattva? So I cannot imagine having compassion for that. It's not that I want them to suffer, for sure. I don't mean that, but I think, 10th Bhumi Bodhisattva, they are so advanced, so ahead of me. What is there to be compassionate about for them? But the Buddha says they still have suffering. They have the most subtle type of suffering. So subtle that they don't, that we don't see at all. But it is said that for a 10th Bhumi Bodhisattva, that kind of suffering, they do feel, of course, because they see very clearly. If they don't see, then they cannot be 10th Bhumi Bodhisattvas. 11th Bhumi, 11th stage is Buddha. 10th stage is one step before. It says they see it clearly. So we need to see clearly. So in order to embody this deity, Cherezi, our eyes need to be wide open to be able to see. But then, as explained earlier, once we see and recognize suffering, do not feed that impulse of suffering along, of collecting other people's suffering. In other words, it's not about you. Don't make it about you. Sometimes people's compassion, can be so stuffy, can be so overbearing. When people try to practice their compassion, or when we try to practice our compassion, we walk into the room, we leave no space for anybody else because I'm so concerned. I'm so, right? That's not Buddha's kind of suffering, Buddha's kind of karuna. Buddha's karuna, as I said, is spacious. So the difference between ego and Buddha is completely different. But there's some characteristics that they kind of share, which is they are both huge, great, big, but one is the bigness that pushes everybody out. The other one is a bigness that contains, that allows everything else to be there, to be comfortably there. So I've said, like, to be in the presence of someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I mean, the closest I've gotten to him is like maybe, I don't know, 150 feet, 200, 200, maybe more, a few hundred feet, But that room, I remember, this is at the University of Virginia in the Rotunda. It's like he fills the whole room completely. But you don't feel pushed out. You don't feel like, oh my, he's so huge, that there's no space for us. But everybody felt, enveloped in that spaciousness, that kind of karuna, that kind of friendliness, that kind of love. So love and compassion, again, if it is the ordinary love and compassion, it can get to be very troublesome. On the receiving end, you're like, no, thank you, keep your love and your compassion to yourself. So be careful that we don't develop that kind of love and compassion for others, that people run when they see you, So we don't want to develop that kind of love and compassion. Avalokiteshvara, the Sanskrit name of this deity, of this Buddha. Avalokiteshvara, the etymology, there are two. The etymology are two. Avalokita and Ishvara, and Avalokiteshvara. Avalokita and Ishvara then becomes Avalokiteshvara. Tai, Avalokiteshvara, or Avaloki, Te, Avalokite Ishvara. Avalokita Swara, Avalokiteshvara, or Avalokite Ishvara. Ishvara is Lord. And that's Avaloki, the Lord who sees or who hears. Who hears is from the etymology of Avalokite Swara. Swara. Swara is sounds. So the one who hears the sounds. So the emphasis now here is on hearing. The one who hears the sounds of the sufferings of the world. The one who perceives and the one who hears. So in Chinese, this name is Guan Yin. Guan is to perceive and to contemplate. It can be translated into both. And then sound, yin, or sometimes Guan Shi Yin, contemplating sounds of the world. So to hear the sounds of the world. So here it's emphasizing, the ability to hear the cries of the world. The Lord who looks down, that's related to generosity. So Avalokita Ishvara is related to generosity, and because actually that has some connotation of seeing, because the Lord that looks down as in gazes down into samsara. So that's the etymology, actually, come to think of it. So I'm mistaken. Chenrezig is related to the first etymology of Avalokiteshvara by dividing it to Avalokita-Ishvara. Then Avalokita is the one who looks down. Looks down as in gazes downwards. So from the Buddha state, gazing downwards. So he's the Lord. Lord is the connotation of having mastery. So that word is important in this context, having mastery. As I say, we look, we see suffering, we hear suffering. Either we become overwhelmed or we don't know how to handle it, then we are not Lord. Lord is in the sense of being able to handle, having mastery over what you see and what you hear, knowing how to respond effectively. Then Avalokiteshvara, which is then the one who hears the sounds of the world. That's the etymology that is used for this Buddha, this deity in East Asia, in China, Japan, Korea, who hears. So both sound and sight, we need to be able to see, and we need to be able to hear. Between sight and sound, sight, we can close our eyelids, then no need to see. Sound is a little bit harder. You have to get things to stuff into your ear. So you can hear, suffering. So to hear the mantra, now to link this to the Deity-Yoga practice, to link this to mantra, right? When we chant Om Mani Padme Hum, recognize that it is both the sound of compassion, as in last time when we met, I said, us calling up compassion, so to say, right? Us calling up compassion, our innate nature, but also understand that it is compassion calling us. So now when we chant Om Mani Padme Hum, you can think of it as, in the West, we have this tradition of call and response. So the call is the call of compassion, as in Avalokiteshvara calling us. And we answering Avalokiteshvara with the mantra as well. Avalokiteshvara calling us with the wish-fulfilling mantra, and us responding to Avalokiteshvara with the wish-fulfilling mantra as well. Then, with regards to the suffering of sentient beings, learn to perceive those sounds as the call of Om Mani Padme Hum, as well as wish-fulfilling jewel, as the mantra that fulfills wishes. Why? Because in this sense, sentient beings are wish-fulfilling jewels. Without sentient beings, we cannot become Buddhists. So the suffering of sentient beings is a call for us to wake up. So Om Mani Padme Hum, breathe in. The suffering of sentient beings are calling us. Om Mani Padme Hum, breathe out. We are called to wake up and respond to that suffering. Om Mani Padme Hum, Avalokiteshvara is calling us and reminding us, do you know that I am you? And Om Mani Padme Hum, as we breathe out, we're answering Avalokiteshvara. Yes, indeed, we are one. So that breathe in, breathe out can be practiced on so many levels. So briefly, this is Avalokiteshvara. This is Chenrezig. This is Kuan Yin. Any questions or comments? There's a question about, I see on Facebook, aggregates would be things that come from past lives. No, not necessarily, not at all. Aggregates are what constitutes, aggregates are the Buddhist atomic theory. Except that in the Western atomic theory, atoms are only discussed in terms of material stuff. And so the elements chart in a Western modern scientific elements chart, like how many elements these days? I don't know. I left the science lab, in high school. Even when I was in high school, I wasn't very much present in the science lab. I don't even remember in my time how many elements, but you get it, the elements chart, right? Buddhism has these elements chart, except that in the Buddhist element chart, very detailed is the mental elements. The various states of mind are seen as atomic. The 5 aggregates is just a very general summary. If you go more into it, it's not just 5 elements. There are many, many, many different. So one system talks about 51, some like 70 something. So this is the Buddhist atomic theory for both mental, emotional on the one hand, and physical constitution. Any questions, comments about Avalokiteshvara, compassion, loving kindness?
Dr. Lai?
Yes.
So I noticed that when I am in the presence of someone else's suffering, especially someone that I'm very close to,
yes,
my mind can tighten up.
Oh, yes.
I'm very rigid.
Oh, yes.
And is that a sign to me that I need to examine my own suffering?
Yes, of course. And also, we have to further meditate on like the wisdom aspect of the Buddha's teachings.
The pitfall there for me is to become numb, to shut out to not see the suffering, to not hear
Right,
it.
of course. Hence, it's so hard. It's so messy.
Yeah.
So we have to, work on, the clarity aspect, the understanding aspect.
Understanding what?
The nature of what suffering is. Yeah, we become tight. That's because we that's our response to suffering. That's what I mean by we immediately want to take that and make it ours. No, so these are just words, of course, but the reason why, especially like in Tibetan Buddhism, they talk about to be blessed, or to be blessed, which actually means to be inspired by the guru, by the teacher, right? Is to look at the example of someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and say, do you think he has seen suffering? I mean, millions of his people that he's responsible for died, Oh yeah, he sees suffering, Does he tighten up when he sees suffering? Kind of like, look, he is one, these days, in modern times, it's hard to be a public figure. You're under such intense scrutiny. But look at him, how long has he been public light? Nobody else, I think. Popes come and go, not to downplay. For example, right? Great religious leaders, right? How many popes have come and gone in the time of Dalai Lama, the 14th? How many kings have come and gone? How many, philanthropists have come and gone? He's there, look at his record. Stable. The wisdom and the compassion, and he will be the first to tell you. He says, I wasn't born like this. In his autobiography, he gives details of liking to fish out, goldfish from the pond, put them on the ground and watch them like jump. He thought it was funny. Then he said, worked at it. So he cultivated, he'll be the first to say, no, you can be like me. Just work at it. So that way we are blessed or we're inspired, like, oh, it's possible. So you should not be disheartened by, oh, I can't, so no, you can. Work at it. I like to say to people, I say, do you have 30 years? And when I said this, I remember one time when I said this, we have two, Sangha members, they're like in their 70s, I think, at least. They're like, they kind of laugh. They're like, no. I say, no, you do. I say, you need to have the attitude. I have 30 years. And I have 30 years to put into this project. I said, doesn't matter right now if you're 8 or 80. You want to develop the courage to say, I'm going to put 30 years on this project and I'm going to succeed. In the traditional Buddhist number given is they call 3 asankheya kalpas. Asankheya is literally, it's inconceivable or cannot be counted, but actually it's something like they do give a number. It's a number. It's like 1 with 60 zeros or something like that. 1 with 60 zeros or something like that. A number of years. And so it says it takes 3 asankheya kalpas, meaning over many lifetimes, to become Buddha. So I said, well, that number maybe to us, like maybe has not much meaning. So we just need to, be brave enough to say, 30 years. In 30 years, I will be Buddha. So it doesn't matter, you say, wait, I'm 80, or wait, I'm 60, You mean I have to go on? That's not the point. The point is, yes, 30 years, no problem. So you don't stop going, you don't stop seeing, you stop hearing. You're going to get, tighten up. But in that moment, breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, Om Mani Padme Hum. Breathe out, Om Mani Padme Hum. Breathe in, Om Mani Padme Hum. Breathe out, Om Mani Padme Hum. Then see what happens. I cannot tell you what might or might not happen. You tell me next time what did or did not happen. Emptying yourself is not zoning out. Emptying yourself is so that you can contain everybody else. You can have space for everybody else. There are 2 types of emptying. One is an escapism emptying. One is to escape from reality. The other is to escape into reality. One is to escape from what is. One is to escape into what is. So the latter is what we have to practice. Practice means first time, not so successful. Second time, not so successful. Third time, not so successful. Remember when you first started to learn how to get on a bicycle? many scratches. But a point will come, you cannot even imagine. What do you mean you don't know how to bicycle? You'll say, no, it's the most natural thing. You just need to get over the initial. Once you get on it, it's like effortless. Yeah, same, you know. So today, let us start the practice with the general opening recitations, which let's all do in English. Yeah? All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in a state of the most perfect and precious awakening. All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in a state of the most perfect and precious awakening. All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious awakening. Thus, until I achieve awakening, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until awakening is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all migratory beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until awakening is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all migratory beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until awakening is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all migratory beings. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. This ground sprinkled with scented waters and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain, four continents, sun and moon, I hold in mind as a Buddha land and offer it. May all migratory beings experience such a pure land. Om Guru Deva Dhakini Ratna Mandala Pratitya Soha. Now to the main practice, again with refuge and bodhicitta at the beginning. So this refuge and bodhicitta, let's say together, And then in the main visualization part, maybe if you want to, no need to say, just listen. And then, you can follow what is being said with your mind, with your imagination. To you, 3 jewels and 3 roots, all you sources of refuge, I go for refuge. To establish all migratory beings as Buddhas, I give rise to supreme bodhicitta. To you, 3 jewels and 3 roots, all you sources of refuge, I go for refuge. To establish all migratory beings as Buddhas, I give rise to supreme bodhicitta. To you, 3 jewels and 3 roots, all you sources of refuge, I go for refuge. To establish all migratory beings as Buddhas, I give rise to supreme bodhicitta. To the 3 jewels, I go for refuge. I confess each misdeed and non-virtue and rejoice in the virtue of migratory beings. I will also be mindful of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly, I go for refuge until awakening is reached. To fully accomplish the benefit of both self and other, I generate the awakening mind. Having generated supreme awakened mind, I will serve all sentient beings and delightfully engage in the supreme deeds of the Bodhisattvas. For the benefit of migratory beings, may I accomplish Buddhahood. I am the great compassionate one, white in color, with 1 face and 4 arms, with palms together and holding mala and lotus, legs crossed, adorned with jewels and silks, seated on the lotus and moon seat. Om Mani Padme Hum. Visualize white-colored Lord of the world of the God realm in front of you, with 1 face, 4 arms, palms together, holding a veena and a lotus, seated cross-legged on the moon. Om Om Swaha. Then visualize green-colored Lord of the world of the demigod realm at the 2 o'clock direction, with 1 face, 4 arms, palms together, holding sword and armor on 1 hand and a lotus on the other, seated cross-legged on the moon. Om Ma Swaha. Then visualize multicolored Lord of the world of the human realm with 1 face, 4 arms, palms together, holding a mala on the right hand and the lotus on the left, seated cross-legged on the moon. Om Ni Swaha. And he is at the 4 o'clock direction. Visualize smoke-colored Lord of the world of the animal realm with 1 face, 4 arms, palms together, holding a scripture and a lotus, seated cross-legged on the moon. Om Pet Swaha. This is in the 6 o'clock direction, facing the central deity. Then visualize the red-colored Lord of the world of the Preta realm with 1 face, 4 arms, first 2 palms together, then the next 2, right holding a chest box and left holding a lotus, seated cross-legged on the moon. Om Me Swaha. It's in the 8 o'clock direction. Finally, visualize black-colored Lord of the world of the hell realms with 1 face, 4 arms, palms together, holding fire and water on 1 hand and a lotus on the right hand, seated cross-legged on the moon. Om Hong Swaha. Thus, in the heart center of the principal deity among the 7 great compassionate ones is a Shri syllable on the moon seat, surrounded by the 6 syllables Om Mani Padme Hum. In the heart center of the surrounding 6 deities are their respective seed syllables, such as Om and so forth. And each of the seed syllable is also surrounded by the 6-syllable mantra, the wish-fulfilling mantra. Now, to the degree that you are able, maintain this visualization. You are all 7 of these Lord of Compassions, Lord of the world, the great compassionate ones. The central Avalokiteshvara is the embodiment of absolute bodhicitta, the wisdom aspect of the awakened state, the clarity aspect, the understanding aspect, the insight aspect, the wisdom knowledge aspect. The surrounding 6 Avalokiteshvaras that appear in the 6 realms of confusion, liberating beings, freeing beings from suffering, leading them to the state of happiness. That is the embodiment of relative bodhicitta, which is the aspect of love and compassion of the Buddha state. Now magnify both absolute and relative bodhicitta. Expand that in all directions. Polishing away all afflictive emotions, polishing away all sufferings, polishing away all stress, polishing away all tightness, polishing away all the inability to see suffering and to respond effectively to suffering. Let absolute and relative bodhicitta polish away all of this as we train with the mantra recitation. With one mantra, breathe in and purify your breath that way. With the next mantra recitation, breathe out and bless your breath as it goes out. And in that way, let your outgoing breath bless all beings that it touches. So that's one way of practicing. Breathe in, purify breath. Breathe out, bless your breath. Breathe in, purify your breath. Breathe out, bless your breath. Breathe in and build up courage and conviction. Recognize the call of Avalokiteshvara, the call to compassion, and breathe out by responding to the call to compassion with your innate love and compassion. Breathe in, hearing and seeing suffering. Breathe out with compassion, responding with compassion and love that is informed by clarity and freedom from confusion, rather than emotionalism, which only leads to more suffering for everyone. Om Mani Padme Hum Re 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 me hong re, om mani pe me hong re, om mani pe me hong re, om mani pe me hong re. Om mani padme hum. 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 Continue to meditate. Listen to the mantra in your mind and breathe in with one mantra and breathe out with the next mantra. Do it slowly. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, Om Mani Padme Hum Hri. Breathe out, Om Mani Padme Hum Hri. Om Mani Padme Hum Hri. Om Mani Padme Hum Hri. Next is the praise to Avalokiteshvara. So the recitations, with the 7 Avalokiteshvaras appearing in the 6 realms, that part is what we call the generation stage of Deity-Yoga. So this week, I want to expand a little bit more on some of the technical details of Deity-Yoga. This is something that can be helpful as you get more acquainted with this sadhana, with this method of accomplishment. It's good to have, more to work with. In the beginning, don't take so much, because then if you don't get the spirit, so to say, the essence of this practice. And then immediately you jump into the technical details, which is often, I think, how Deity-Yoga is taught. I think a little unfortunate. So what I'm trying to do is first to give you more a taste of, on the essence level, what are we doing, when we practice the deity. Then after you have some of that, then the more technical details can really enhance the essence, which is what's most important, And so some of the details here. So the first part is what we call the generation stage, which is the production stage, so to say. You are generating, you are producing, you are calling forth, utilizing your senses, sound, colors, forms, texture, even smells, In theory, your 6 senses are all recruited to produce this image, this experience of the Lord of Compassion. Then the next part is what's called the completion stage. So you can say the first stage, generation stage, is relative bodhicitta in the foreground, absolute bodhicitta in the background. With the completion stage, it's reversed. Now, absolute bodhicitta comes to the foreground and relative bodhicitta is in the background. So this praise sets the stage to introduce us into completion stage. So the words of the praise, again, on the surface, it sounds like, the Buddhist equivalent of hymns to God. Oh, you're so great. Oh, you're so wonderful. I praise you. I prostrate to you. I pray to you. I make offerings to you. It sounds like that. But actually the praise, of course, on one level, it is to call up devotion. But on another level, related to completion stage, it's introducing to us the nature of reality. So this is the wisdom aspect that earlier in answering Kathy's question, I said, we have to develop this openness, this spaciousness. Technical Buddhist term, meditating on emptiness. But emptiness is again and again and again, we have to say that it's not nothingness. It's this openness without fixation, without getting stuck. Not spacing out, but presently spacious. Not becoming spacey, but presence that is spacious, that can contain all the suffering of the world, that can effectively respond to all the sufferings of the world, but without losing this spaciousness. So the praise is introducing us to the nature of our mind, the nature of reality, the nature of experience. The devotion part is actually also related to realizing nature of mind. Those of you who have been following the Gongchik class, you know what I'm talking about. So the devotion part here is not accidental, that the completion stage, nature of mind teachings, instructions are given using the outer form of devotion, of praising Avalokiteshvara. Praising Avalokiteshvara as Pure Land, praising Avalokiteshvara as body, speech, and mind, and praising Avalokiteshvara as activities. The last part where it says, molten lava ground is the Pure Land, right? And kill, kill, strike, strike, those sounds that you will hear in the most intensive state of suffering, which is the hell realms, in fact, can be transformed into 6-syllable mantra. It is not saying, killing and harming is the actual activities, but that the killing and the harming can be turned, can be transformed. So the weapons that is used to torture those in the hell realms, they can be transformed into offerings. They can be turned into offerings. All those are related to the nature of mind, the nature of reality, the nature of Buddha, the nature of all sentient beings. And so the praise actually works like this. So then you do the praise, and then you meditate on completion stage. But because most of us don't yet exactly know this nature of mind, so if you see, during these practices, the completion stage period is done very briefly. There's a reason to that. It's done very briefly because it doesn't want you to kind of like concoct your version of the nature of mind. So it wants you to kind of, in a very immediate way, kind of see if you can directly see what that nature is. And if you can see directly what the nature is, then you can rest in that and you can meditate for a long, long time. But if you cannot see yet, then better not to linger there. Because lingering there can cause a lot of thoughts to arise, concepts to arise, and then you mistake the concepts to be the nature of your mind. Sometimes people misunderstand, they say, you guys, don't do the completion stage. So you're supposed to do it. You follow too much Tibetan culture, blah, 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 all of that, But actually, I think it's not like that. It's not because of that. It's because, for the most part, many of us, this nature of mind not yet recognized. So then, if you linger in that state and try to recognize or try to force it, it's going to distort. Yeah. So anyway, let's now do the praise and then very briefly the completion stage. But see if you can, any of these words can lead you to kind of perceiving a little bit, just even a little bit of what this nature is, then that's good. Then dedicate. Don't grasp. Shri, in the realm of the great compassionate one, where good and bad are non-dual, appearances are without true existence, existing only in the manner of illusions. Within the state that is naturally pristine and without fixations is the boundless and pristine realm where attachment and aversion is self-liberated. To your realm, great compassionate one, I praise and pay homage. Ah Hong Hri Mani Padme Hum. Shri, the indivisibility of appearance and emptiness, the exalted body of the great compassionate one. This empty nature of appearances is like the reflections of the moon on water. Within this great ocean of the empty nature of appearances is the boundless and pristine exalted body of self-liberated empty appearances. To your exalted body, great compassionate one, I praise and pay homage. Hong Shri, the indivisibility of sound and emptiness, the exalted voice of the compassionate one. This empty sound nature of sounds is like the sound of echoes. Within this great ocean of the empty nature of sounds is the boundless and pristine exalted voice of self-liberated empty sounds. To your exalted voice, great compassionate one, I praise and pay homage. Shri, the indivisibility of clarity and emptiness, the exalted mind of the great compassionate one. This empty nature of clarity is like the color of rainbows. Within this great ocean of the empty nature of clarity is the boundless and pristine exalted mind of self-liberated empty clarity. To your exalted mind, great compassionate one, I praise and pay homage. Shri, the molten lava ground is the realm of the great compassionate one. The bull-headed Ava is the exalted form of the great compassionate one. Kill, kill, strike, strike are the sounds of the 6 syllables. Arrows, spears, and swords are the various offering materials. In the boundless and pristine expanse where happiness and suffering are self-liberated, to you, the great compassionate one of existence and appearances, I praise and pay homage. Aham Sri Mani Padme. I dedicate this merit to all my old mother sentient beings of the 6 realms. By this merit may I achieve the all-knowing state. May all who wander on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating enemies of faults and delusions. Through this accumulation of precious merit dedicated to all migratory beings, may they never be separated from the sublime Dharma. By myself and others perfectly realizing the 2 benefits, may the melodious beat of the Dharma drum beautify this world. May the spread of the Buddha's doctrine ever increase. May all sentient beings be blissful and happy. May they practice the Dharma through the day and night. May the 2 benefits of self and others be spontaneously accomplished. In all lifetimes, may I never be separated from the perfect gurus, but enjoy the richness of the glorious Dharma. Having thoroughly perfected the exalted qualities of grounds and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. Any questions or comments before we end today? Anybody? Anybody? Don't be shy.
Rinpoche, what is the meaning of re at the beginning of each of those recitations?
Hri is the seed syllable. Yeah, remember
Right.
in the visualization.
And what's the meaning of that particular syllable?
Well, first of all, the notion of seed syllable. Seed syllable in Vajrayana meditation, first of all, it is a mental image that represents like the essence of the deity. So there are sounds, you know, they don't have explicit meaning.
Okay.
Although meaning, you know, is sometimes layered upon, I would say, each of these syllables. Just like Om is a syllable. Mm-hmm. Om, of course, very famous because Hindus, you know, Jains, Buddhists, you know, all the Indic traditions have used this Om. Right? Om actually has no meaning. It's a sound. It's one syllable. Like in English, you know, we say a syllable. So a syllable in and of itself don't have any explicit meaning. But because these are, you know, for whatever reasons, right, we say people have recognized the power of that sound, then meaning is kind of layered upon it. So Hindus have Hindu meanings for Om. Buddhist, in the Vajrayana, for example, Om, yeah, we say Om is actually three sounds. O, U, Om. So O, U, is the essence of the exalted body, speech, and mind of Buddhists. So you can say, like for Buddhists, we have layered these meanings onto Om. Then Hong is another word that has been layered. So Hong, the physical syllable written, you can kind of unpack that into 5 parts from Buddhist explanation. That it's actually a syllable consisting of 5 parts to it. And these 5 have now come to symbolize the 5 primordial wisdoms of the 5 Buddha families. Like there's an H in there, that's one part. There's the U part. There is the part. Then there is the nasalization part. The 5th part I forgot, So there's 5 of these parts. Then it's the 5 primordial wisdoms. Hri, I have not seen it unpacked specifically like this. But Hri is said to be the seed syllable, the essence syllable of Avalokiteshvara and also of Amitabha. Amitabha is Avalokiteshvara's guru, Avalokiteshvara's teacher. So they have the same seed syllable, Hri. Tara, for example, her seed syllable is Tam. Tam. Again, no explicit meaning, but it's derived from the fact that her mantra and her name is Ta. Right? Tara. So the seed syllable is Tam. Like Buddha Shakyamuni's seed syllable, if you remember when we did that practice, is Mu. Mum. Sorry. So Mum is probably derived from Muni. Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha. Right? So the seed syllable is Mum. So these are seed syllables. So no explicit meaning, but to be understood as the essence. So you can say that the 6 syllables arise from Hri. So the all Om Mani Padme Hum, they arose from Hri. So that's why in the visualization, Hri is at the heart of the central Avalokiteshvara, right? Om is at the heart of the Avalokiteshvara in front. Ma is at the heart of the Avalokiteshvara over here. Ni is at the heart of Avalokiteshvara over here. Ped is at the heart of this, the one right behind. Me is the one over here. Hong is at the one in the heart at the 10 o'clock point. So Hri, Om, Ma, Ni, Ped, Me, Hong. Yeah. Six petals. You can also imagine one big lotus, the central one seated in the center, then the 6 petals are the 6 Avalokiteshvaras. Other questions? So this week, I want to then start focus more on the absolute bodhicitta aspect, the nature of mind, nature of reality, the completion stage. These two is really important to go hand in hand. We call it compassion meditation, but in Buddhist practice, in Buddha Dharma, you cannot have one without the other. So slightly false advertisement to hook people in, because not everyone, those of us who are of this kind, our kind, like these days, oh, compassion. Oh yeah, I want to be compassionate. When you say wisdom training, no, that's okay. We're like, oh, wisdom. Oh yeah, right. So again, a reminder, the last class of this program is this Saturday, not Sunday. Then Saka Dawa, this month is over. Then the other offerings that will continue is the Thursday night Lojong series continues. Then those of you who are studying the Gongchik, we continue our Monday, Wednesday, Friday. There are people who have expressed interest in the Gongchik. My advice is you go to the Drigong Dharmakirti Circle YouTube and watch a few of those classes. And you may or may not find it relevant to at whatever point you are with your practice. If you find that it's relevant enough that you can make the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we certainly welcome anyone to join us. It's not an exclusive club by any means. The material is in a way cumulative, but in a way not cumulative. So we have a lot of recordings from previous sessions. I would say watch the very first couple, way back, and then watch the last couple. Then you more or less, if you want to join, you more or less have enough of a reference point to kind of join halfway. Because the material that we're studying, it's not an extended essay that the founder wrote, so that you have to follow all the arguments, right, to kind of get it. In fact, it's a collection of Vajra statements, what we call Vajra statements, or what I would call easier to understand, one-liners. It's a collection of one-liners. And then together with the commentary written 400 years after the one-liners were compiled. So that's the Monday, Wednesday, Friday class that is continuing. Then the Lojong class on Thursday. And you'll see that the Lojong class, like whether it's a Lojong class, some of you are attending all three. You'll see that it all flows together, right? It's absolute and relative bodhicitta. Especially in Drigong Kagyu, I see more and more now. Of course, everybody, bodhicitta is the essence of what all Tibetan Buddhist lineages are practicing. But especially in Drigong Kagyu, again and again, it's explicitly kind of brought up and pointed out. It is bodhicitta, it is bodhicitta, it is bodhicitta. It is none other than bodhicitta. No matter what you do, make sure that you understand is to magnify bodhicitta, both absolute and relative bodhicitta. Yeah. So now we end with a final dedication, which says, excellent and precious bodhicitta, where it has not arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but rather increase, greater and greater. Chanchu Semcho Rinpoche Ma Ge Pa Nam Ge Gu Chi Ge Pa Nyam Pa Me Pa Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Bel War Shou. I want to also thank, I've noticed some of us who are on Zoom, we are also on Facebook. That actually, is an easy Dharma activity that you can do if you don't mind doing that. When you do that, Facebook has a certain algorithm. So when they pick up that, people are gathering around this, then it will direct more traffic to other people whom they think might be interested in this. So not just for me, it's not about me. Whatever Dharma thinks, if you just click there, hit there. Of course, it will also know you like Dharma, so you're giving them some information, yes. But think about others, When you kick in the algorithm, it's just one click on your end. You don't have to think about it anymore. It's actually telling Facebook algorithm, like, oh, people are focusing on here. Yeah? So anyway, thank you. You have a good day. You have a good evening. And for this series, we will meet on Thursday next time.
Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank